This is economics. In case you forgot what class you were in, this is Chapter 10, Money and the Financial Market. This is the first video of Week 4. So you should have already turned in your Chapter 3 packet and received your Chapter 4 packet. Also, you should have taken the Chapter 9 test before you start this video. So take the Chapter 9 test on Monday, and then Tuesday, start this video. Once you've done all that, well, let's get going. Money. It's all about the money, money, money. Well, not quite. Proverbs 30 verse 8 says, "Feed me with food convenient for me." What is this verse talking about? This phrase asks God to supply the portion appointed to the psalmist with an understanding that he determines what is appropriate. As you examine the topic of money, understand its appeal and recognize how many lives have been destroyed by an insatiable desire for more of it. You need to make this prayer yours. Ask God to give you only that portion that He has determined is right for you, and ask for the grace to accept that what He gives is what is convenient for you. We're on page 186 in our textbooks. I want you to read the 2 paragraphs on page 186 to yourself. They're intro paragraphs. Once you have finished reading those paragraphs, please unpause the video and we will continue. Roman numeral 1, money. What is money? Believe it or not, we need a definition for money, so here it is. Money is anything that a society commonly uses and generally accepts in payment for goods and services. Now, anything that the culture generally accepts can be considered money, whether it's paper bills and coins, checking accounts and traveler's checks, even fur, dried fish, seashells, tobacco, human hair, shark's teeth have all at one point been money for certain groups of people. The next term that we're going to define is the term legal tender. Here's the definition. Legal tender refers to items that creditors must accept as payment. The picture that you see on the screen there is a close-up of a $1 bill, and on all dollars you see this little note. This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. So, if you tender, or in other words, if you offer your bills and coins as payment for a debt, all creditors must accept it. Imagine if you were in a situation in which your creditors did not accept money. Well, hopefully you'd find out another solution, but technically it is illegal. They need to accept an American dollar as a payment of debt. So, let me ask you this question. Is money important? Probably the best answer is, yes. So, tell me more about money. To illustrate the need for money in an economy, compare the economic efficiency of early American farmers to farmers today. Most early American farmers built their own houses, cleared their own land, raised their own crops for food, milked their own cows, made their own butter, sewed their own clothes, and so on and so forth. They provided nearly all their own needs by their own labor and thus required little money. Because of the money economy that has developed, however, modern farmers can specialize and sell their produce for profit. Their specialization has made them so efficient that fewer farmers are needed and more people are free to work in manufacturing and service jobs. With the money the farmers and other workers receive, they can buy houses, milk, butter, or clothes, and have enough left over to buy many extra goods and services that early Americans would never have been able to provide for themselves. What alternatives are there? Actually, before we get to that, let's move on to the functions of money. Letter A, functions of money. What is the function of money? Well, if you answered that question, probably the first thing that came to mind was to buy things. Yes, but also to serve as a measure of value and a means of storing purchasing power. So, let's talk about each of these. Number one, a means of payment, to buy things. Okay, on page 187, that's where I'm at right now, and fourth paragraph, what do you mean by the cost of doing business? To illustrate, let us suppose that you want to purchase a used car. How would you go about locating one at an acceptable price? Would you walk down a busy street asking each passerby if he has a car to sell, go door to door asking the same question, or stand at a busy intersection shouting and waving a sign bearing your request? You're probably thinking, that's crazy. It would take way too much time and effort and would be too costly. And you are absolutely correct. Economists have found that rational people do everything possible to reduce the cost of doing business. To lower the cost of buying a car, you, as a rational person, would likely use the internet, your local newspaper's classified ads, or visits to a used car lot. Likewise, a society uses money as a means of payment to reduce the cost and effort of doing business. What alternatives are there to using money? Well, probably the most but the most well-known example is using the barter system. Why money was invented. Sorry, I've got nothing smaller. Yeah, imagine trying to use a cow to buy what you want. If you get lucky, well, here's the definition of barter system. Barter is the exchange of one person's goods or services for another's. The primary fault of the barter system is that it is an expensive and time-consuming process. Once again, we illustrate with another automobile example. Let us assume that a carpenter living in a barter economy needs to have his car repaired. He takes a day off from work, and after spending several hours searching, he locates a mechanic. There is, however, one problem. The mechanic does not need any carpentry work done. He wants some steaks. Now, the carpenter goes in search of a butcher who will trade steaks for carpentry work so that he can trade the steaks for car repairs. Now, imagine the butcher wants something else. The process could go on and on. If you get lucky in the barter system, you may find yourself in a double coincidence of wants. Here's a definition of double coincidence of wants. It's where both parties involved in the trade wanting what the other has to offer. But how likely is this going to be in the barter system? Probably not very great. The 2 or 3 days spent lining up multiple exchanges could have been used to produce carpentry work. By imagining many others engaged in a similar multi-person exchange system, you can recognize how the barter system severely hinders the development of a nation's economy. If we were in the classroom right now, I'd say let's create this illustration and go with it in the classroom. Imagine if, you were sitting in the classroom with your classmates and that you picked one item of your own that you felt like had some worth. By the way, it cannot be money or a debit card. And now, suggestions might include like a pack of gum. Of course, you wouldn't have that in class. A mirror, a comb, a photograph, a necklace, a pen, a pencil, gloves, a book bag, fingernail clippers, so on and so forth, keychain. So these things would be what you would have on hand. Now imagine, of course, you would all get your items back, so don't worry about that. But imagine if you had to do the following. Explain that everything would be returned to the original owner at the end of the activity. Some suggestions might be maybe you could partner up to barter 2 items to get a nicer item. And of course, you'd have to make sure that you actually all traded something, and then maybe after getting 1 item, I would ask you to trade it all again. By the end of it all, I would want you guys to take a seat and explain what you could or could not accomplish and how or why not. Some of you guys, maybe the item you picked wasn't as valuable as you thought it would be. And so, whoops, now all of a sudden you're stuck with it. No one wants to trade with you. Or maybe you had a situation where your item was the item that everyone wanted, but no one had anything that you really wanted. People would continually ask you for items, but it really didn't help you because you didn't want anything that they had. You can imagine with this barter system, it just wouldn't work. How different would our lives be if money, as we know it today, did not exist? Of course, remember, that would not just be cash, but include debit cards, checks, credit cards. How would we obtain the things that we would need to live by? This illustration we just did in class maybe is a decent example in how we ought to do it, or how it would not possibly work, at least not very well. Question: can money be spiritually beneficial? The answer is yes, but how? We got to recognize that money is not evil, but that what is done with money can be evil. Money is amoral. It could be used for good things and it could be used for bad things. And so the idea of money being used as spiritually beneficial, definitely if you're using it for spiritual purposes, you're helping out someone who is in need. You are providing an item for someone who is in want. So there are examples. You can give money to a missionary, to a church. And so there are spiritual rewards, spiritual benefits to having money. The root of evil is not money, but the love of money. So, one function of money is that it is a means of payment. Second of all, it is a measure of value. It is a measure of value. What would you do if you were driving down a highway and saw all the road signs displaying distances in kilometers? Well, you would probably attempt to estimate those distances in miles because the mile is how you commonly measure distances. Economics is no different. Every society must have a common and consistent measure for economic value. Hence, whatever a nation uses for money becomes the economic value, or the yardstick by which its people express the value of goods and services. If a person tells you that an item sells for $10,000 or that service costs $20 an hour, you have a pretty clear understanding of its value. Far better than if the person expressed its cost in terms of a certain number of books, cows, beads, or seashells. So, number 2, money, function of money is as a measurement of value. You know how much something is worth when you put a price tag next to it. That's all the information that we're going to cover for today. Remember, hopefully you guys got the Chapter 9 test done before starting this video. Don't forget to turn in that test when you turn in the Chapter 4 packet. Hope you all have a good rest of the day. Be good, do good.